Hey there, it's Syama, CEO of Scaling Retail, and today we're talking about strategies for 2020. Now, guys, as you're looking to approach the end of this year and you're starting to incorporate and look to the future, there are so many different components that are going to be shifting and changing the retail landscape. Some of these ideas and strategies are things you've been hearing about for the last 12 months, and others might be new in terms of how you're going to implement them and what's actually going to be meaningful to your business. So today we're going to launch and go a little bit deeper into experiential brick and mortar, a really important subject that is something you should be deeply considering to the future of your distribution strategy, but quite simply also for your marketing and for your brand presence. It used to be that people were exiting out of brick and mortar, and these days, guys, brick and mortar is one of the newest entry points that brands are looking to in order to get in front of customers. Not only are more and more emerging market and growth stage businesses turning to brick and mortar, but they're doing so from a very specific point of view. They're integrating with new technologies as well as looking at new types of showmanship in order to wow and dazzle consumers of today and consumers of tomorrow. Let's talk a little bit about who those consumers are and make sure they're in alignment with what your brand is. Now, guys, in particular, when we're looking at these strategies, we're thinking about Gen Z and the Millennials. Now, Millennials and Gen Zs are usually going to be your first line of target. Certainly for the last few years, we've been focusing so much on millennials that the surgence of Gen Zs are now taking the forefront of where we're looking at spending our marketing dollars. Gen Z spend about 80% of their money and time shopping in real life. So when we're thinking about the allocation of resources, IRL becomes even more important. And guys, by 2025, Gen Zs are going to be making up 40% of global shopping population. That's right. That means that developing strategies today that will protect your business for 2020, but also beyond, means getting in front of what Gen Zs are looking for. And guys, if they're spending so much time IRL and looking inside of these stores and shopping, you've got to develop a cohesive strategy and a plan to get onto experiential. So what does experiential look like, right? How do we start to unpack the future of experiential? It's so often a word that's so diluted. It used to be in the past that something experiential was just simply having a pop-up, maybe having some cocktails or having some hors d'oeuvres, and hey, we're bringing you into our store. This is the experience. But now it is really the status quo for someone to have a cafe inside of their store, for someone to host events inside of their store. These are no longer new strategies to drive sales inside of a retail establishment. In fact, guys, they're almost expected, right? If you have a brick and mortar and you've been thinking about how to innovate or even launch a new flagship, then you're going to want to listen up to what the brands of tomorrow are activating today. Number one, they're looking at showmanship and they're looking at integrating with theatrics. Take a look at example, the company Showfields. Based in Soho in New York, Showfields is a great example of how experiential has taken to the new forefront of shopping. Showfields spans 3 different levels, and inside of each of those different levels, the salespeople that guide you through each of the different rooms, that highlight the products, that educate you on the brands, are all actors. That's right. They're not your traditional customer service people. They're not the ones who are so deeply educated on how to close the sale. They're looking to take on characters. They're looking to deliver an experience to you rather than simply closing at the point of sale. The traditional mechanisms of closing and of selling in store is no longer how many units am I going to add on to the transaction or how do I upsell more strategically. It's about creating an experience where a customer is going to walk away and either convert and buy that product in the store or maybe even convert and purchase online. We're no longer looking at those touch points of being in-store versus online as some sort of competitive revenue stream. In fact, guys, in-store and online is really simply one sale, right? It is selling to one customer, and that customer is purchasing from you from both of these different points of interaction. So as we're looking at this experiential brick and mortar space, you also then have to ask yourself about experiential e-commerce. Building out an amazing brick and mortar establishment not only now takes hiring actors, looking at set design and staging, bringing in new forms of technology, which are quite important, but also translating that branded experience from in-store to an online online conversion touch point. But let's go back and talk a little bit about technology. Most of you guys have been hearing in the news about new ways of integrating technology into your store. What you may not have been knowing is that in the last 10 years, this has slowly been taking and becoming the main course of action when launching brick and mortar. A brick and mortar store these days should not launch without understanding heat mapping in their store, being able to track where people are spending the most time, and then synthesizing and integrating that information with actually the point of sale and the sell-through reports. Are people spending a lot of time in one location of a store but not buying anything? We also then take a look beyond just merchandising and heat mapping, how people are integrating with new interactive mirrors. We're also looking at revolutionizing traditional forms of in-store components. For example, mirrors are no longer what they seem anymore. It used to be in the past, you had a mirror, you tried something on, and the most important thing for that store to do was to make sure that the lighting looked good. Right? You walk into a Nordstrom's, if the lighting looks great, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to buy 5 of these. You walk into a Walmart and you're like, oh, the lighting looks terrible. I'm going to walk out and buy nothing. But these days, guys, beyond lighting, you have to be looking at these interactive mirror displays. You now have the opportunity to take photos of yourself. You have the opportunity to even virtually try on new clothes, to send images of yourself and products to your friends and family in order to help you buy and choose products, and to also interact directly with the customer service people through these mirrors. Mirrors are now an old school technology that are finding new school ways of disrupting the shopping experience. The other forms that we need to look at when it comes to technology in store is also mobile shopping. No longer, again, do we have POSs that are just behind the cash wrap, but in fact, people are walking around with mobile payments on their phones. You can walk and buy a product and exit that store faster now than ever. So it's not simply about getting someone to walk from the opening of your store all the way through to the end. Your merchandising strategies are different, how you're thinking about closing that sale through mobile POS, and then also looking at new kinds of in-store technologies, whether those are touch screens throughout the store, using an interactive mirror, or quite simply having more innovative technologies on your hangers. We now have things like RFID tracking and opportunities for you to make sure that your sales floor are sufficiently stocked and staffed with now customer service people who have better and more immediate information to service those customers. Now, lastly, guys, we've talked a little bit about the theatrics behind the store. We've talked a little bit about thinking about new technologies, but we also have to turn our attention to what does it look like if you're not ready to integrate into a brick and mortar store off the bat. Maybe it's not in your budget right now to be able to launch your first flagship. However, you might be looking at a pop-up shop or maybe even opportunities at co-retailing. Those are other ways of bringing that experiential business model to life. When we're thinking about experiential, we have to ask ourselves, how are we taking our brand and representing it in a pop-up shop? Right? Are we making sure that we have these integrated technologies? What are the most modular ways that we can start to approach in-store design that is still high touch? Because remember, your customer is coming in store maybe at the first point of sale or the last point of sale, but they are coming in there for a branded experience. All right, guys, I know there's so much to think about when it comes to retailing and when it comes to experiential for 2020. If you're confused about the strategies that are right for your business, if you're looking at when the right time is to launch your first flagship, the right time to do a pop-up, or quite frankly, who you need to hire to execute to build that business that has a wow factor, please send us an email at hello@scalingretail.com. We've worked with brands globally to help launch brick and mortar, create experiential events, as well as integrating technologies and new forms and ways of communicating your brand to that customer. All right, guys, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.